Now we have an inaugural panel discussion on catering to the Bharat narrative. From this discussion, we'll get answers to how businesses are creating their local market narratives and strategizing their go-to-market content strategy building on the larger perspective of the Bharat audience. I would like to invite Mr. Santosh Desai, MD and CEO Futurebrands India, to moderate the discussion. It's my pleasure to invite our esteemed panelists, Namrata A. Chotrani, CEO, Khadim India Limited, Arjun Ranga, CEO and Managing Director, N. Ranga Rao and Sons, Akshay Bector, Chairman and MD, Cremica Food Industries Limited, Lalit M. Agarwal, Founder and Managing Director, V-Mart Retail Limited. Welcome, everyone. Over to you, Mr. Desai.
Welcome to this panel discussion on, we are talking about catering to the Bharat narrative. I have a wonderful panel with me, people who really are extremely well qualified to talk about the subject. Let me just take a minute or two to set up, I think, the context of the conversation. The India versus Bharat binary is something that has been a marketing staple for as long as I can remember. And it's something that has, historically, there is this assumption that these are two different worlds with their own different rules and codes, and that we need to understand them, therefore, both on their own terms. The implicit mental model has been a linear one. The idea of progress has been really defined by the idea that as roads and electricity kind of moves into ever smaller towns, progress gradually kind of moves from the larger cities to the smaller cities. And therefore, the idea that influence moves and diffuses slowly, both in terms of time and in terms of intensity. So the popular assumption that what happens in Delhi and Bombay today will happen in the level 1 town or tier 1 town maybe 2 years from now. And as you go further into Bharat, it'll probably take 3 to 5 years. And as it travels inwards, its intensity reduces. That has been the implicit mental model that business has worked with for a long, long time. Now, that has changed substantially. The coming of the internet and the coming of digital and the kind of access that mobile phones have created has dramatically kind of altered that picture. And I think today, therefore, the question of how valid is this whole dichotomy and this binary that we've all, at least I have grown up listening to, what is the experience of people who are actually operating in this market? What is their experience? How do they see consumers? And what are the new rules of the game, if any? So, to cover some of these areas, we have the panel discussion. So without further ado, let me kind of jump into it right away. Let me begin with you, Namrata. Is this binary, this idea that there is an India and there is a Bharat and the two are different and they have completely different kind of rules and new ways and completely different ways of understanding them, is that valid anymore?
I'll just take a step back and, possibly, let's have a conversation as to how, the Indian demographic has been divided into two segments. The first part is, the one who are part of the metros and the tier 1 cities, who shop from the high street stores and malls. They're more aware about fashion because they're well traveled internationally nowadays. They're more adept at social media, and they are very demanding, and they are expecting much more in terms of product, in terms of service, in terms of VM, in terms of Omni, all of it. And this is what we call India. So that's step 1. Step 2 is the second segment, which stays in the tier 2 cities and the tier 3 cities. They're not very far away from the cities now, from the urban cities, because their domestic travel has increased. Even they have much more access to social media than it was there earlier. But their buying and the consumption is more from, exclusive brand outlets of some particular brands or multi-brand outlets, or even, small retail counters, which we call mom and pop stores. So this is what we call Bharat. Okay. Now, according to the stats, I'll talk about at least the footwear industry over here. 50% of the footwear is in the range of or is below the MRP of 500 rupees, and 35% approximately is 500 to 1000 rupees. So 85% is below the MRP of 1000 rupees. Okay, but that's only in terms of value. Below 500 rupees MRP is approximately 80% of the volume, is something I would estimate. So the difference in this value and volume is what I would possibly call India and Bharat. Today, we are an affordable fashion brand, and we have two different platforms of sale. One is retail and one is distribution. On the retail side, we have 80% of our SKUs are below the MRP of 1000 rupees, and 55 to 60% of our sales will be coming from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. But these tier 2 and tier 3 cities, the customers are very well aware of the fashion, like they are aware in the metros and tier 1s cities. So we have to be up on our game even in these cities, purely because if we are not able to cater to that kind of fashion, we are going to be out of the game. In the distribution business, majority of our items, which is almost 85% of our items, are below the MRP of 500 rupees. But and this product range is mainly your basic Hawaii chappals, PU chappals, EVA sandals. You'll have PVC sandals. You'll have sports shoes, low price sports shoes, low price sports sandals. But they're not as this old conventional blue and white chappals you used to see, or boarding sports shoes. You're going to see really fancy Hawaii chappals. You're going to see really nice sports shoes, which will give a real run for the money to a lot of the retail brands in the country. So we have started investing in a proper product development team even for the distribution brands. And we have like a seasonal calendar even for this kind of, for this category of products. So you can't have a chalta hai attitude anymore, because I believe that if we do not move in step faster than normal, we will lag back, because Bharat is becoming India very, very soon. Just to give you an anecdote, like our retail team is actually getting worried looking at the distribution products because of the change that we are seeing very, very fast. So I think, I'm seeing this conversion happening faster than we would have anticipated.
Akshay, from where you sit, and the category that you represent, is it consonant with your experience, the fact that what Namrata was saying, that there is a convergence that is rapidly happening, or do you still see a difference?
I'm in total agreement with what she's saying, and India is changing very rapidly. You're right about the impact of internet, the impact of roads, and I would like to add the impact of increase in rural income. So what I want to also add to this whole, thing that is changing is, how India is being perceived as a country. So I think that national pride kind of, percolates to people, and aspirations become more localized, even more than before. So there was always a preference for local brands that was, very strong. And I think it was relating to excellence, means of identification of the people to the local brand, a sense of pride in things local. I think that has now accentuated. So with the advent of internet, development, and I would say added is, the political phase of the country, the way it's becoming more Indian, and its recognition in the world has a deeper impact on the customer. So things Indian are going to find more resonance with the customer. We've seen that happen all the time. And even though my category is, in the sense, westernized sauces, but our focus was to develop, the hinterland and develop the market, because when we entered into these products, there was practically very small market. And tomato ketchup, for example, is an industry with 1 or 2% of India's population. And what our strategy was to percolate it down to the villages and, develop a whole environment of, restaurants and fast food cafes. And we are seeing that change. And, that change is visible across small towns, mandi townships. We are seeing huge per capita growth in consumptions. It's leading to very strong brand connect. And I am seeing the divide between India and Bharat reduce very rapidly. That's my take.
Arjun, your category is an interesting one because in some ways, it is perhaps, you would expect that change may not have happened to the same degree there. Would that be right, or is that a false assumption?
I agree with both the speakers already. Take our category. Agarbatti has 80% penetration in the country. You won't find a store anywhere in the country where you won't find Agarbatti. So India and Bharat, it's always been an issue of either distribution challenges or consumer mindset. There are people living in urban who still believe they're Bharat. So, and there is an issue of reach and distribution where you need to have infrastructure developed to reach the hinterlands of the country. So yeah, in our category, it's always been a factor of distribution and consumer buying behavior and preferences, whether it be rural or urban. So India and Bharat, there's a very distinctive mindset of the consumer. But if you look at the products that are in the Agarbatti segment, you have brands, that have names that you won't even be able to pronounce that are doing exceedingly well in the rural markets. So it's about consumer preferences, fragrances, choice, prayer, religion. It's all intermixed. And so for our category per se, there is no India, there is no Bharat. It's just belief in the Almighty. And I think that kind of unifies everybody.
Lalit, your category is the one where actually it is by definition, local, in the sense that, your presence everywhere will be local, apart from, of course, the online presence. What is your experience in this regard in terms of the convergence or otherwise of these two entities?
Yeah, hi everyone. Very, very interesting discussion and something which I am kind of known for speaking about it globally. India is definitely divided into two different markets, and we definitely call a larger portion of that country, which is Bharat, which is the hinterland, which is the where the dense Indian live, where that real Indian live, which is almost 80% of our India's population, which is right from those tier 2, tier 3 town, which includes rural, which includes, every town of those, every district would be divided into tehsils, and those tehsils would be divided into villages, and all those villages get consumption done through either tehsil or from the district, main city. So that's how the whole Bharat is typically divided. And I think, the demographic is very, very interesting. And being a youth country and a young country, the kind of aspirations are very, very high. The role models that we chase versus they chase, I mean Indians who lives in metros and cities and bigger cities, and they chase our Bharat people. And so they have the similar role models. They chase similar movies, they see similar cinemas, serials, or internet space. So their aspiration levels are similar. But as Namrata also mentioned, their pocket size would be a little lower. What I believe that large population demographic which lives there is largely earning between 20,000 to 50,000. That's the focus range that we take up. And, for those people who earn between those kind of, income levels, they would buy fashion needs only 2 or 3 times a year. And we are largely in value fashion. So we believe, for them, these are all need-based buying, but driven by aspiration today. Today, no youngster buy that dhoti or a sari. They want to buy the best of the denims. They would catch a bus from a village, also go to the town or the city, seek for the best product. Because they can buy only once or 2 times in a year, they would do more research. They would understand more about the fashion which is in the market. They would need best of the quality because they would use it more number of times. They would wash it more, use it more, because they don't want a product to fail very fast. They also need it at the right price because they don't have money to buy at a more price. So it's the compulsion of a manufacturer or a brand or a retailer to provide him in that particular zone. And that's the toughest nut that to crack, because he wants the most stylish product, as Namrata was mentioning, on the style, design, the best of they don't want very boring product like a corporate or a formal person going to the office would do. So they would want a very, very zazzy, very bold. They would experiment few things and also buy the best, want to buy the best quality. So that's the whole piece that this customer has. But yeah, as you are trying to understand and we are trying to bring in, the fashion gap is reducing, the aspiration gap is reducing. The bridge is the information channel which is getting created. So by that channel, the need for the similar kind of fashion, the need for a similar kind of style or the product is coming very, very fast. And that is how every brand and every retailer has to be presenting in that kind of, number one, product, number two, experience, and then the price or even the convenience that they want. So even now, the whole expectation, definitely when we went into a lot of those towns, there were hardly any big retail store. There was all those mom and pop, small bazaar kind of retailing, which used to happen. And still there are many towns which don't have a big store like ours. So there is still a big gap in the market, but there is also a leapfrog which is happening. There is also an e-commerce channel which is coming up. There is also a digital channel which is cropping up. They may not be today buying from them, because still for them buying itself is an experience. It's a shopping experience. It's an outing for the family. So they would want to enjoy those outings. They would want to physically go down there, touch the product, feel the product, and enjoy the product and enjoy their experience. So they will still want to do it rather than buying, looking at a photograph. So for them, it's tough, but they are getting prepared for it. They do have a smartphone tool in their hand, and they do want to now speak about it, show those products at the store. Ki ye hai kya? Is this available? Is this what you have? Or bring out ki kal ke serial mein, yesterday's serial, that lady was wearing this salwar suit. I want the similar salwar suit. Those kind of talks have started. But yeah, it is somewhere getting scenarized, but still there will be a uniqueness in that particular market, because their ethos, their particular culture, their kind of budget, their kind of understanding on the value of product is very, very different. And that is how every brand and every retailer has to prove to them and making them effective. So that's what my take is.
Yeah. Namrata, if I had to just, if you have to look over let's say the last decade, since the time that, say, the smartphone became much more prevalent, and try and zero in on maybe one or two really big changes that you've seen in terms of consumer mindset. You already mentioned the fact that, there is a greater need for quality, and there is a, in that sense, they're seeking much more quality. But apart from that, are there any big changes that you see in the consumer landscape that I think everyone needs to take note of? Anything that comes to mind?
So I think, given the fact that, so again, I'll again divide this into two parts in terms of, again, the metros and the, and the Bharat, as we're calling it.
Yeah, so I mean, I would, for now, if we could just focus on Bharat, saying that, over the last 10 years, how has Bharat changed and the mindset in the Bharat changed?
I think it's more a function of awareness, which is driving a change in their mindset. See, if you the focus more is in demanding the product, in demanding the service. They're not ready to compromise in terms of product and service. If, for example, you go into a retail store, they want you to have the same kind of retail experience which they're experiencing internationally. For a tier 2, tier 3 city, they want the kind of experience which they are seeing in the metros and the tier 1s. So be it in terms of product, in terms of service, in terms of packaging, in terms of visual merchandise, in terms of omni, they want it all, because that is the kind of exposure that they're getting either through the social media, through television, through the travel that they are doing. So you have, in fact, as Mr. Agarwal was saying, a lot of companies, even non-brands, even Mr. Ranga was of the opinion of that a lot of the small brands or smaller companies are able to provide products and services in smaller tier and smaller cities, which they are not really prominent brands, but they're able to provide this kind of products and services, and the consumer is consuming that because they are happy with that product and service. So the idea is to get the product right, to get the value proposition right. If I am going to use my brand to be able to provide an boring sports shoe, but on the other hand, if Mr. Agarwal is able to product a fancy sports shoe in his store with a similar price point and a much better looking, it will work better, because that's what the consumer wants. And in fact, a lot of non-brands are able to do a much better job of it. So the consumer today, as Mr. Agarwal said, that because of social media, also because they are aware today, when they see, forget a Shah Rukh Khan or Akshay Kumar, today a Rashmi and a Raju, who are social media influencers, when they go out and when they put up posts online, showcasing, I'm wearing this sports shoe, I'm wearing this chappal, is becoming really popular, irrespective of how fancy the brand is. So the customer takes that product and goes to the store, says, "Aisa item hai kya aapke paas?" In fact, a lot of our customers, they walk into the store, they'll see a product and a picture, and they'll say, "Aapke paas aisa item hai." So I think the consumer is demanding, and rightly so. And if we are not going to be up the ante, I think we are going to suffer a lot. And another point, in a providing affordable fashion with a variety, at the kind of, and earning the kind of margins to be able to afford a retail play in a high rental country like ours is quite an art. So I think it's we are seeing that kind of demand, but we have to cater to it.
Arjun, do you see in terms of changes? Do you see? I mean, I think Namrata spoke, among other things, also of the fact that there are now new benchmarks, and the Bharat consumer, in a sense, has new reference points and is able to therefore calibrate expectations accordingly. Anything else that comes to you sharply as perhaps a difference that you've seen over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think more and more India is becoming Bharat. That's for sure. I mean, if you look at the way we've been operating in Bharat per se as a brand as well, we don't have a separate product for Bharat in India. For that matter, we don't even have a separate export quality. What we sell in India is the best, and that's what we export as well as a company. Now, always, if I go to rural, it was always a planned purchase. They would know what they wanted. There was very, very less impulse purchase. They would plan their purchases ahead of time and be very discreet in what they wanted. Brand loyalty was always very high, and it continues to be so, and that's increasing. They don't switch brands at all. Value for money has always been the point of differentiation, not anything else. It was never fancy marketing. And I see that expanding a lot more with Swadeshi movement coming in also, with the whole thought of Atmanirbhar and with the information overload that everybody is having with smartphones across the country. So for me, I think India is becoming more and more Bharat in mindset. The last 2 years of the pandemic, the consumer buying behavior has changed. All of us have reduced impulse purchase to a great extent. We plan our buys a lot ahead of time, which is how Bharat was always. So for me, it is not that Bharat has changed more. I think India has changed to become Bharat. I'm taking the reverse view, to be honest, from my product perspective, and I'm seeing that. Right, earlier we would have a lot of tail sales that would happen, and with upselling, with promotions. All of that has now come down. Clear, differentiated products are selling better in both urban and rural. So for me, I think it's Bharat first now, and that's the way this category has always evolved, and that's the way I think most people will start to understand India as well. That's my two bits.
Add one point, and maybe differ a bit to Mr. Ranga here, that brand consciousness, I think, is there, but brand loyalty, I think, has reduced to the effect that if another company is ready to provide a better product, I think consumers are takers for it. Just giving an example of the trend that you were asking for, Mr. Desai, was that if you see e-commerce today, if you go to Amazon, you go to Flipkart, you'll find a lot of sellers selling very interesting products without a very popular brand names. But the kind of sales that they are doing online are phenomenal. Be it even social commerce for that matter nowadays, which is becoming very prevalent in terms of at least talking terms. There are a lot of non-brands doing, a lot of companies and sellers doing a lot of work with non-brands, and they're doing really good business. So, even in the footwear space, I think maybe I can talk for this category. A lot of times in various markets, you will see a lot of non-brands doing very, very good business, and surprisingly so, because they're offering the right product at the right price point, which is relevant to the consumer. See, the consumer today will be experimenting, but they will be experimenting being value conscious in nature. So you have to be aspiring affordable fashion to be able to be relevant to them, irrespective I'm not saying brand is not relevant, but brand is not the only relevance today. I think the product and the value offering is what I believe is relevant
I
today.
completely second the view. I mean, it is a given. I think all of us here understand business, and if your product is not good, is not differentiated, doesn't offer value, I mean, it won't sell. Of course, that's a given, and you just can't upsell anything by giving schemes and promotions anymore. And that was my point. And what I have seen now more than before is that if a consumer trusts a brand, like it used to be for us in rural, that if one product from, I have a brand called Moods in UP, okay, and it only sells in Hitherlands or UP, and it's unshakable as a brand, and it's really doing very well. And it only sells there, right? And if you look at the way the consumer perception there is that I trust this brand, it's giving me value, it continues to give me value, so I'm not going to switch so easily. So that mindset I see India also embracing now, and that was my point. That
Right.
it was very easy to get consumers to shift brands earlier. It is not so easy anymore. You have to, I mean, it is a given. You have to give quality, you have to be differentiated, you need to be relevant, you need to communicate what you stand for, you need to be a purpose-led brand, you need to make a difference beyond just what you are. All of that is a given, and all of us realize that over the past couple of years, right? I mean, you can't just be a run-of-the-mill, discount-oriented, scheme-related marketing company who can just try to get something off. I mean, that was never my point. What I'm trying to say is that the consciousness that Bharat consumer had, India is now embracing as well. It's not so easy to just, attract a customer by giving something free. It used to be the case earlier, and that was my point.
Right. Akshay, I mean, food has been perhaps one of the most vibrant spaces in terms of both, in terms of what brands have been doing, as well as in terms of consumers and how they have changed and how they are embracing new ideas. What from that perspective, how would you characterize some of the biggest changes that you are seeing in consumer expectation? What is at the heart of it?
See, at the heart of, I would then, for food, it's the whole country. It's difficult to differentiate between India and Bharat in this respect. I think the whole country is moving towards, higher expectations that are generally changing with the environment around us. The internet changes things a lot. There was a time when information could be, you could build a narrative. I think today that point in food is over. So there's need for more truthfulness, etc. Coming to Bharat, for I think the brands, the aspirations of the people or the wants and desires of people could be, slightly different from the Indian perspective. And I just wanted to take, go back to income levels that was being mentioned earlier. You see, we cannot strictly relate to income levels between Bharat and India, because the cost of living in a smaller city is a lot lesser. So the disposable income is a lot more. And if you're looking at, they have different aspirations. So you can have a, farmer buying a tractor for a few lakh rupees when he doesn't need it. But he's just buying it to show off. So it's about aspiration, and his aspirations are different from, other people. Do we expect him to go to a McDonald's or to an Indian restaurant? Well, he'll spend more money at a higher quality Indian restaurant because that's the kind of food he wants. So you'll see that, and I'm reflecting to other things to try and get everyone to connect to Bharat and India and what is the difference. It's sometimes the customer is spending the same amount of money or even more money, but buying things that he thinks are valuable. So there's a need to connect with the customer, the Bharat customer, or get him to you. So either ways, for a brand to be successful. For in our case, we were selling a very foreign product. We wanted to connect with Bharat, and we made moves towards that aspect early in life. And I think we've been successful. Getting a whole new set of customers and a whole new market created. But I'm sharing my learnings in this journey and reflecting on how I've seen the intensity of consumption that can happen in Bharat in the spaces that customer wants. So I'm coming from a position that there is a lot of income and it's rising very fast. And I think that the disposable income in Bharat is going to rise much faster than urban India. and they are having a very low cost living. A 50,000 rupee salary in a small town in Punjab would mean 25,000 rupee disposable income for entertaining spends. Not so in Delhi. Delhi, the 50,000 rupees will barely get you past your meal. So I would imagine that India is going to, the whole opportunities in Bharat today, we need to align ourselves with the customer over there or get him to us. So it's either ways, both things are going to work. Because of internet, I think it's going to be a two-way story. So it's not just local aspirations. You could also market the other way around.
Lalit, in retail again is another area that has seen so much action. You've had in the last 10 years, the entire e-commerce kind of, entry, which would have changed the landscape. And I think you've addressed some of that already in your earlier comment. But if again, what from a consumer perspective, in terms of one, of course, the supply landscape has changed completely. But in terms of the consumer expectation and what would you put your finger on saying this is really the big change that you see?
I think change is, if I see, digitalization brings it a lot of information, a lot of knowledge, the awareness about the product, awareness about the quality of the product, awareness about the price of the product itself is a big change, because we remember those times when people used to sell even a FMCG product at a higher prices, and right, for apparel and those footwears and those things, definitely they were selling at a much higher cost. So those information, those availability has really improved. The customer still also now understands that there is something. They were always very sharper. They are very smart, because those people who have lesser money are supposedly more smarter, is what I call, and they know how to spend their buck. So these pieces have really bettered. It is also definitely a big fight that is where it is coming at every household, which is what Akshay was saying. It was about the income levels versus the disposable income, and then versus the savings mindset that they have culturally. Culturally, the older families and the traditional families have always in India been saving a lot. So saving has become a big part. Now, to change that mindset, which is a bigger mindset change, which is happening very, very fast. So even in the smaller town, there are now people, if I speak about FMCG, we see those, cream biscuits and those costlier biscuits selling more in Bharat. And not in still the Indian side, people are now getting little more conscious about their health and their sugar levels and stuff. But in those towns, those are luxuries. So they would want to consume some of those. They would really want to go out and have those fast food, because they don't have too many such outlets in the market where they could do it. So they make at home. So they would consume all those products also. So I think large amount of, whenever they feel there is a good thing which is happening with them, or their property prices have gone up, their feel good factors are good, they would definitely want to enjoy that. They would want to celebrate that. And celebrations are very, very important. Whether a celebration of festival or a celebration of marriage in the house, those are very, very important ceremony which they celebrate with full hearted, and that's the big change, big piece that we see in that particular segment of the consumption, because there it is not very mandatory to do a celebration at weekend, but it is mandatory to celebrate a Eid or a Diwali or a Holi or a Chhath. That is very, very important. So that is what is. I think we need to understand their impulse, what drive their impulse, and what could we affect them. And then that is what works for that kind of economy. But yeah, one thing which I was trying to come up, there is one big element of which is very important for that customer is a trust. The word trust. Whom do they trust? Where will they want to shop? There was a discussion going on about brand, but I feel, it's more about that particular product or availability, or that store, or that delivery boy. The quotient is the trust, and if we are able to give them trust, and that doesn't come in with one transaction, that only comes with multiple transactions, and the consistency of delivery of your experience or his experience in that transaction will bring in that trust. and which is very important for that customer, because that customer can't get fooled. If once he get fooled, he will never turn up to that brand and never turn up to that store again. So that's what my understanding has been. But yeah, largely I think there is an element of aspiration which is going up. There is a disposable income which is also going up. The saving levels are reducing. So the consumption in that particular geography and that particular segment is increasing a lot, because there is a lot of thing to be done, whether it is their home or it is their basic accessories or it is their basic wardrobe. I think everything, or the kitchen, everything they need to upscale. And there is still a joint family concept. There are a lot of people living in a house. They still need to go out, have an independent lifestyle, live their life. So that feeling is erupting in that particular geography. So that will also build a large amount of consumption coming forward.
Right. One thing that you mentioned, which I found interesting, and I was wondering if Namrata, I'd like to take this up, which is the need perhaps for, particularly when addressing the Bharat consumer, to have a very local focus. So when we can talk about Bharat as an overall entity in an abstract sense, but actually what it breaks down into is our very, very local kind of markets with local cultures, with their own specific preferences. So, I mean, how does that play out? And how do you account for the fact that Bharat is actually made up of a lot of different, very distinct kind of preferences that might arise? And how do you think about it and cater to that?
I think you've raised a very pertinent point, Mr. Desai. I think, as you rightly said, Bharat is not as homogeneous as we make it out to be. It has multiple Bharats within itself. In fact, the various geographies have very different demands, needs, challenges within itself. Just to give you an example, Northeast, which is a very strong market for us, is very different than Bengal and Bihar by itself. Northeast is very high fashion. They're ready to pay the price for it also. You give them the product, they will give you a very good price. But on the contrary, Bihar or a Bengal, they are relatively more basic and economical, but at the same time today, they still demand fashion within those constraints. And every of these markets have their own competitors as well. They have their own competition, they have their own product demands. Like South India is very, very strong on PU products. Just give you an example. Bihar is very strong on Hawaii chappals and to an extent some PU products. Northeast wants very fashionable sports shoes. They want canvas shoes. They want fancy Eva sandals, those very thick ones which are very fashionable, which is very available in in the Southeast Asia. So I'm saying each of these markets are different. The competitors are different. The products are different. The price. You have to have a different strategy for all the markets. You have to have a product for all the markets. You can't have one product all for all of them. No ways. It just does not work. For both our retail and distribution business, we have different selections for the Northeast markets. For Bihar, as because marriage is a very prominent season during July, August months or the September months. We have for the marriage season for them, and they particularly like a certain red color. So you have footwear which is red in colors. You will have accessories which are red in colors, which is focusing on that particular market. And this doesn't focus on product. It's also on communication, which is nowadays a challenge. More and more, if you pass across the various districts, there are various dialects. So you need to figure out how to communicate also in a very structured vernacular language, because you cannot again have one language fit all. And with the democratization of the internet, more and more voices are coming out which are relevant and which are demanding localization as well. So standardization of brands across the various platforms, across the various markets is something like all brands need to unlearn and relearn how to communicate more effectively. In fact, a lot of the marketing communication also that we are trying to do focus on the various different markets. in even when we're trying to use, as I said earlier, communicating through Rashmi and Raju is more maybe ROI accretive compared to maybe using an Akshay Kumar or a Shah Rukh Khan. But the Raju and Rashmi not necessarily communicate in the Hindi language. They'll also communicate in Bengali, in Tamil, in Odia, and we prefer it that way. So in fact, when we're focusing on the various festivals, we're focusing on particular seasons, we use influencers who will talk the language the consumer wants to listen to. So I think hyper localization is something which we all realize is a challenge which we will have to find a solution for constructively if we have to make Bharat work well for us.
Arjun, you had mentioned, in fact, very interestingly, the fact that in some way, I mean, your category actually unifies everyone in a sense that, everyone is unified when it comes to, thinking about the Almighty. That being said, do you see differences in agarbattis, for instance, across, different local markets? Do you see, different preferences, or is there unification there too?
Oh no, absolutely. Very, very localized. Completely second Ms. Namrata's thoughts on that. We have to be hyper local, but your quality needs to be consistent. You can't have different qualities for different parts of the country. That's what I meant. Your packaging, the way you communicate, the brand ambassadors that you have, your ATL, your BTL, the media that you use in each market is completely different. Whether it be urban or rural, the way you market your products has to be customized to the customer you're selling to. That's a given. So also your packaging. I mean, if you look at our consumer fragrance preferences, if you just go 100 kilometers north of Mysore, the fragrance preferences are different, very local, very regionalized based on what they perceive. We actually have a library of close to 1,500 different fragrances. And in India, we have almost 300 different fragrances across the country for each of the agarbatti products. And the brands are also independent and different. Cycle is the umbrella brand, but we have various sub-brands. You go to a market like West Bengal, we have a brand called Rhythm Amber, and that sells only in West Bengal. You go to UP, we have something else, and in East UP, we have something else in the western part of UP. Of course, it's very hyper-local. Understanding consumer nuances is a given. What color, what packaging, what font, all of that. There are a lot of local requirements as well that we need to follow apart from statutory guidelines. So conducting market research never actually works for us, because usually market research tends to standardize. The online sales has given us tremendous insights now. I think with online coming in, we get a lot of our sales from rural parts of India, which was not the case earlier. And we are able to get a lot of insights of preferences, choices. Customers are more responsive, which we are able to use as insights and deliver better quality products to the customers as well. So with the advent of technology and e-commerce, we have rechristened our communications team as insights, and the insights that we are getting from the market, we are now able to create tangible ideas. We have created methodologies where we can actually, do smaller MOQ runs so that we can test products in local markets for preferences and choice. So going forward, the way I look at the market evolving, there'll be hyper customization. Okay. And we are one of the first companies in the world to create custom incense where you can customize your packaging, your fragrance on our website. And we see a lot more Bharat users because looking at the fragrance choices that they use, none of our Western fragrances do well. It's predominantly the Indian fragrances that do well on that. So going forward, I'm sure that there'll be high level of customization, personalization of preferences, choices, and brands and companies will have a tough time figuring that out. But that's the order of the day. And for us as well, huge amount of products management, back-end supply chain integration. And what GST has done for us is that we're able to now manufacture locally. Our industry, we had to have central manufacturing earlier, but with GST coming in, we're able to manufacture close to market locally near where the market is. And hence, we're able to customize even better and manage logistics also more efficiently. But our category is very, very high volume, low value. Now we produce 14 billion incense sticks a year, almost 7 billion prayers. So it's very, very, very high volume. Okay, so and in terms of FMCG category consumption, it's among the highest. per piece. It's only 30 paisa or 40 paisa per stick, but a mother's hopes and dreams for her children is on that 20 paisa stick that she lights. And each and every store that opens with 2 agarbatti sticks in the morning. So that's and the value of that is just 70 paisa, but all your hopes and dreams rest on it, and that's the need that we're fulfilling. And if we can't customize that need, then we'll have an issue for sure. So yeah, we've been always hyper local, and the requirement is increasing with the way modern trade is also scaling up and stores opening across. They are looking for local solutions also.
Right. Akshay, I mean, do you think this is one of the reasons why this need for hyper-localization, this very nuanced understanding of the many Bharats, is one of the reasons why homegrown brands seem to do much better when speaking to this audience? You are operating in a category which historically was dominated by a lot of multinationals, and yet you are seeing the fact that the success stories of today are increasingly more homegrown brands. Do you think this is one of the reasons?
Well, there'll always be a place for boutique products, and they will continue to answer some of the specialized needs, that customers will have. And occasionally there will be a big story because of, that the market did not understand the demand, and suddenly you had an internet sensation to become a very large volume player. That's the order. I think that's a big change that has happened today. But what Namrata has been saying, and what is again seconded. But there is a lot of local preference, and the market definitely changes, and it's very difficult for a company, and especially non-food, to start tailor making products for a Gujarat and a Punjab simultaneously in the same product. But I think that's where the big challenge was for us, Santosh, that we had to answer. And I've particularly put these two names because you will understand that one is a salty market and the other is a very sweet market. So the palate is different. And ice cream coming out of Gujarat are sweeter than ice cream coming out of North India. So for us, to try and find a middle path in terms of the flavors that connect with India as a whole was, I think, part of the skill sets that we had to employ. What I'm seeing today, and these local connects, differentials that we were talking about, in footwear and in agarbatti. What I'm seeing is that with the advent of internet and other things, there's a rapid change which is happening. So I am seeing a Bihar and a Bengal also changing towards, gravitating more towards the central point. And in the sense that customers are changing, the local market spending habits are changing very rapidly. And some of these markets are becoming, well, they're small, but they are becoming very fast growing. So I am seeing that the cultural change is happening rapidly. It's also got something to do with better governance in these areas. So the Bihar and UP and many of the hinterland areas have been held back because of sense of social security that people had, or not social security, basically security that people had to be a little understated, rather a lot understated, which is changing very quickly. So for us, it's about trying to find connect that percolates across the category. So for example, earlier decisions was to develop a vegetarian mayonnaise because India is largely vegetarian. Now that research came out that Punjab is more vegetarian than South India, and that was kind of a surprise because you would expect it the other way around. But that's India, and then to develop the market on a totally differentiated product, so that it becomes difficult for other companies entering into this space to you've kind of changed the pitch for them. So I think there's an opportunity for companies to look at how they can meet this, varied need across regions in a singular way. It's difficult to make thousands of products for sure. If you can do it, that's really good. But if one could address it, because you cannot plant foreign palettes in India, that doesn't work. And that's very clear. That's one big learning, that foreign palettes will not work. So it's the local palette and it's a local brand and the local person who understands it. He's going to be successful. And then you'll have the national pride kicking in, which will make the Indian brands, I think, and they've seen the strength. You've seen that across categories where brands with a local Indian connect have held some very strong, positions in market segments and almost unbeatable. And I don't want to name the brands here in particular, but, Mr. Agarwal will resonate with that they're just unshakable. So, and I think that that's where the opportunity is, and the opportunity is in trying to align us with the broader need, with the local understanding.
Lalit, I mean, just to take up on what Akshay just kind of mentioned about your having the vantage point from which you can observe this. So you would have seen, how relatively homegrown brands versus multinational brands, how brands that are located and have their center of gravity in larger cities versus brands that are actually, much more focused towards Bharat. Is there a movement from a consumer side? Is there a movement towards these local, more homegrown brands, or would you say that is not the case? How would you read this?
So, Santosh, definitely with the kind of diversity India has, the differentiation between the seasonality, the taste, the dialect, the way of living, the way of wearing, the festival being enjoyed, and there is a culture, and there is a lot of culture. Like Namrata was speaking about Northeast, and within Northeast there are so many tribes. There's so many culture within Northeast that you can't understand that Northeast. There are so many languages within Northeast. And so we were talking about, Akshay was saying about some brands. So there are very clearly certain brands which will take immense popularity in an area like a Bagh Bakri Chai in Gujarat. It's a very, very specialized brand that will only work, and that is only it will work. You can't have without that, or a Tide in or a Ghadi detergent in Uttar Pradesh, So there are those specialized brands which are very clearly the local preferences, and you can't take it away. You can't take it away, and people don't want to experiment. They have developed a taste. They have developed a trust, is also what I would call. So there are certain products where there is a dialect and there is a taste issue, but there are certain products where there is also a trust issue. So which people will prefer, and they know they have been using it for years and they will want to use it. And what I see, more and more digitalization, more and more information centricity is definitely giving advantages to local brands. There are a lot of discovery which is also happening for local brands, for cultural brands. So I think there's both the side, larger research, better product from national or multinational brands. They are also able to get their piece in place wherever they are unique in the proposition. But if there is no uniqueness as such, and there is a uniqueness in a local brand which is required for that particular territory, which is more in food, very, 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 very clearly more there in the kind of wearing that they do, the culture that they have, like a traditional wear for a woman in India is very different across state. Within a state, in certain portion, south, east, west, you will have difference in the way they wear the sari itself. A sari drape in India can have so many kind of saris that they wear and so many kind of draping that they do. So there is so much of localization which is there instilled in the culture of India, which you can't take away and which is very difficult to be taken. Now people, as Akshay was saying, they feel proud in saying that we are this and I am this. And that's the pride which we have been speaking about, and the political parties have been speaking about, and vocal for local is the new jargon which is coming in, and that is being definitely accepted and accredited.
So, I mean, I think we are kind of running out of time. So I just thought that we could probably close with each of you just, perhaps highlighting, what do you think that you have got right, as a brand, as a company, which has helped you connect with this market, with Bharat? What would you, if you had to pinpoint something that you say, okay, among the many things we got right, perhaps this is something that made the most difference, and this is what you would attribute it to. Lalit, let me this time start with you. What do you attribute it to?
I think very clearly, straightforward, be simple, no nonsense approach is very, very clear, which is important because prudence can only come in from there. And anytime we try to do extraordinarily different, extraordinarily fancy, extraordinarily shiny, it falls back. So it has to be straight, clear, transparent, and honest, which is very, very important because honesty is appreciated very largely by these consumers. And we have seen that happening. And you need to deliver that honesty consistently. You can't take them for a ride at any point of time, which is very, very clear.
Right. Arjun, what would your reply be on this? You're on mute, Arjun.
Yeah, for me, the revelation was to stop trying to sell my products, rather sell our company and what we stood for, what our purpose was, and to do the right thing every single time, with integrity. That's been the key. And to learn to hyper localize and customize products based on needs and requirements. That's, I think, been the key differentiator for us, is to believe in who we are, believe in what we stand for, and communicate that very aggressively.
Right. Akshay?
So for us, I think this whole exercise, and I would say my 25, 30 years in business, has been about making products suited for the Indian palate. And I think we started our journey, I mentioned earlier, with developing vegetarian mayonnaise and not an egg-based product, which would resonate with India as a whole. And we got, markets across, segments or regions to align with this and change the game for multinational players coming in to, play on a pitch that was laid out by an Indian company for the first time. Which is something which has not happened. We've always had to play a follower as, in trying to make products innovated by companies abroad. So it's for the first time that we were able to, lay the pitch out, and that's helped us a lot. And I think I mentioned earlier about addressing palates across regions. For Cremica, it was very important to find that sweet spot between all the palates and try and address, making a condiment that would work across regions largely. I mean, I cannot satisfy everybody, but if there's something that could reach a sweet spot, be a high quality product, and I think that's what's worked. So it's all about developing a product that would align with the Bharat of today and tomorrow. So, and we are very happy that we are in this space. Yeah.
Namrata, the last word with you.
I think as Mr. Agarwal said, just keeping it simple for us and for me, since I've joined, I think the focus has been just product. I think our motto has been giving affordable fashion for the entire family, all of so I think the idea is to ensure that we are able to stay relevant in the market with the existing customers, with our existing audience, and the new audience, which is demanding fashion, irrespective of the price. I think the idea is just because you're affordable does not necessarily mean you don't have to give fashion. Fashion can also be affordable. And I think the idea we are working on internally on a daily basis is to be able to provide that product to the customer across the various markets as per their choice and tastes, and customizing it as per their preference. So I think that's something which I believe has worked for us. Numbers and margins and balance sheets can just can get secondary. If you're not able to provide the right product, nothing will work. So I think that's something which has worked for us. And I think but I think before I close, I'd like to just mention to Mr. Bector that I think I absolutely agree with him in terms of palettes. Giving a very personal example, as I was a child, Cremica was not really available in Bombay. I am from Bombay. But when we used to go to Lonavala, we used to generally go and buy bread. And the only bread we used to choose used to be Cremica because the taste used to be really nice compared to all the other brands available, and that taste still has stayed with us today. Even today, if I have to buy white milk bread, I will definitely go for Cremica versus any of the brands available. I don't think any of them are able to compare the taste, except for maybe a localized small bakery which may be able to compare it. So I think as Mr. Bector rightly said, the Indian palette is very different compared to the international palette, and you need to be able to provide that niche and customizable niche to be able to, which will be relevant to the audience. So I think I am the relevant audience for you, Mr. Bector.
And Namrata, you made Akshay smile, and that's a good thing.
You made my day.
That is a appropriately
What can be
sweet note,
better?
appropriately sweet note to end our and round up our discussion on. So thank you for that, Namrata. So thank you. I'm sure that this very rich conversation would be of immense value to the entire audience. Thank you so much, Namrata, Akshay, Lalit, and Arjun for joining us.
Thank you, Santosh. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Akshay, Arjun. Great insight.
Thank you very
A lot of
much.
learnings.
Nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for sharing the detailed inputs on the topic. Now we'll proceed to the next session. Stay tuned and keep tweeting using the hashtag #ETBrandBharat.